Doesn't say. Oh, that does.
Yeah, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a live show. Me and Hambo here are going to talk about Nathaniel Clyne's return to Palace, Ryan Inniss leaving the club, going to Charlton, and we'll also be answering your questions. Hambo, Nathaniel Clyne is back at Palace. I'm excited by it, and for multiple reasons. One of them being that I feel like we still need another right back because Nathan Ferguson is, of course, out. I don't know how long he's out for. And also, he's one of our own. I can say that about Nathaniel Clyne. He's been at the club at a young age, coming back to the club. Clearly seems like he's fit for the club to actually go and approach him and sign him on a short-term deal. But what do you make of this transfer?
I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. With Ferguson not fit, we definitely need someone in there pushing Wardy. That was the whole point of getting Ferguson in the first place. You can't have one option for that position. Okay, Kelly's an option at right back, but we know he's definitely more comfortable at centre back these days. So it wasn't really an option in there. So having someone of Clyne's undoubted pedigree coming in is massive. It's noticeable that the club are talking about his experience and his personality, which are obviously important things. But we shouldn't ignore the fact that it's a short-term deal that probably makes sense for him and makes sense for us. You know, the perfect situation is, you know, we end up seeing the Nathaniel Clyne, not necessarily that left us, but the one that's progressed and has become an experienced top-level footballer, and he finds some form, finds some energy, and perhaps actually we sign him and keep him. Because he is providing proper competition and you know, a proper option at right back. But worst case, he can cover right back and left back. And as you say, you know, it goes back to certainly your early days when you were a tiny child watching Palace. But you know, when he emerged on the scene, when Warnock was here, there were other players tipped to come through ahead of him, particularly at right back. Clyne used to play left back a lot in the academy because we had a guy called Michael Abnett who ended up playing, I think, might have been Finland or Sweden or something like that in the end. But he was keeping Clyne out of his preferred position. But you know, the Warnock and Jones and Eze saw something in Clyne that sort of came out of nowhere. Really, well, not necessarily nowhere. Obviously, they saw he was a good player, but all of a sudden it was just we can chuck him in. We chucked him in at 18 years old with no experience, and very similar to the Wan-Bissaka situation where, you know, came in, dropped in at the deep end, and looked like he'd been there forever. So I'm really happy to see him back. The only concern I have is I don't want to see a player that's a shadow of his former self. And when we saw him at Bournemouth, if you remember, Wilf destroying him, that's the Clyne I don't want to see. You know.
Yeah, that will hurt because of how he started his career at Palace. But I'm not that worried because you'd think that the club are smart enough to know that if he is fit enough to play in the Premier League and if he's not, clearly, of course, training and playing in the Premier League is something completely different. But he has proven himself at training for him to sign for the club. But what do you make of the deal being short term? I mean, it helps us, of course, but what if Clyne plays good? Then we have three right backs. You got Nathan Ferguson there. You got Joe Ward there. It creates a bit of a problem there, but it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. You're absolutely right. It's almost, you don't want to invite problems. The fact it's a short-term deal says everything about Clyne needing to keep his options open because, you know, he wants to find a permanent home, if you like. And as much as we'd probably like that to be at Palace, it doesn't really fit in with what we need to do at Palace, which is get younger, hungrier players that can stay with us. You know, Wardy's 30, approaching 31, I think. Clyne's 29, coming on 30. You know, that's an area where we needed that young player in Ferguson, and we're going to probably need another one at some point in the next couple of years as well. So I think that's part of the reason why it's a short-term deal. But part of the reason it's a short-term deal is he's had constant injury problems and other issues that have kept him out, you know, at Liverpool and have forced him to go out on loan. And if we're being completely honest, you know, his stock in the game fell really quickly, didn't it? You know, it was the England right back, and then basically almost out of nowhere, just dropped, just plummeted, injured, wasn't playing. When he came back from injury, wasn't selected, injured again, all sorts of other stuff going on in terms of off-field activities that were rumoured, which I don't think we're allowed to say. So, you know, hopefully he's back with his, he's back at his home. He's back in London, friends and family around, and he's obviously enjoying it. I think he said as much that he's enjoyed being back at Palace. And if there's anywhere that we can get him back to his old self, it's got to be Palace. So there we are.
Yeah. So let's quickly answer Jordan's question about Zaha before we continue talking about Nathaniel Clyne. He says, what is the situation with Zaha? I think he's referring back to what happened with the COVID situation. I'm not too sure if he's got COVID or if he hasn't, but it seemed like he might be back at England with his wife. I'm not too sure.
So I mean, all I'll say is that there are rumours that not that he's got COVID, although you'd obviously be concerned that he might need to self-isolate if he's been around people that have, whether he's tested positive or not. But football seems to have this bubble where as long as people test negative, they can continue to operate as they normally would. So as far as I'm concerned, the rumours aren't around him having any COVID issues. The rumours are around him having picked up an injury on international duty. Now, there's absolutely zero official confirmation of that. But personally, I'm not expecting him to play against Brighton on Sunday.
I swear, if he doesn't play against Brighton, then it's like, who do you have? Who do you have going forward? Do we rely on Schlupp or Eze? But of course, let's continue talking about Nathaniel Clyne before we talk about Zaha a bit more. But that is bad news. That is bad news. If Wilf is out, then I have zero faith against Brighton, I'll be honest with you. But do you think, in a way, that going back to Clyne, do you see him starting for Palace? Because we know that Hodgson's got his favourites, and Hodgson gave him his cap at England as well in international level because he was manager there. Do you see a situation where, I don't know how I would sum Wardy start to the season? I feel like he's been fine. But do you see a chance of Nathaniel Clyne starting ahead of Wardy come even Sunday?
No, I don't know. I think Clyne's there purely as cover. However, what would be interesting, we'll see, it'd be good to have a close look at Joel Ward over the next couple of weeks, really, because will he have to kick on? I know you've put that comment up there in big letters for me to talk about.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah.
Are you done with your client?
Am I done with Clyne? Well, I suppose I have to be. Look, all I'm going to say is I don't expect him to start anytime soon, but he's hopefully will put some pressure on Wardy to up his game. Not that he's played that badly.
Yeah, look, we're going all over the place today. We're going to talk about Nathaniel Clyne, but let's talk about Jeffrey Schlupp. Honestly, I was not a massive fan of Schlupp till I am this season because of how much of an impact he's had. And I swear to God, if he's back for Brighton, then that's what I'm excited about. Because let's be honest, other than Schlupp, who else has been performing at top standard? And we've seen it. We've missed him. I think Andros Townsend has had a good start. Wilfried had a good start. But Jeffrey Schlupp, he has been a massive, massive miss over the last couple of games.
I've picked him as my player to watch in Wilfried's absence on Sunday, assuming Wilfried injured, which again is unconfirmed. It's just my pessimistic belief based on the rumours that are going around and things that we've heard. So I actually see Schlupp coming in like for like, Eze keeping his place on the left, and Jeffrey Schlupp playing up top with Jordan Ayew rather than anyone like Benteke coming in, or even Batshuayi. Batshuayi might come in for Ayew, but I see Jeff doing what he did pre-season, which was play up top for large proportions of the game. But I'll be delighted to have him back. And, he's won most people over. I will always hate him being selected as a central midfielder because I think it shows the worst of him. But play him as a left winger or play him as a left-sided forward. The guy's direct, he's got pace and he's got quality and he's got a good finish on him. So it's no wonder he's a Premier League winner. Oh dear.
Yeah, he is. And we also had another Premier League winner, Joe Ledley. But not Premier League winner. Flipping hell. We had a Champions League player in Joe Ledley as well. We've had all types of players at Palace. But Come Natural says I think Nat will raise his game and will be a great asset. I believe that as well. Competition, you can't go wrong with it, which we don't have right now at right back slot. And Tony says, I think this about Zaha. I believe he's agreed to play one game due to his wife being heavily pregnant. Yeah, I've heard that as well. His wife is heavily pregnant and he's back in England for that reason. But of course, Hamber's mentioned maybe an injury. I guess only time will tell. The press conference should be tomorrow for Roy Hodgson, so we'll find out then. Ward has justified his place. Yeah, I agree with that as well. He's had a good start to the season. But of course, as I said, competition will be good. But about Nathaniel Clyne, do you know how many honours, what should I say, honours that he's got for Palace?
I don't know. I saw you commenting on Twitter, I think, earlier, but I didn't actually read the information just because it was a tweet of yours, and I don't really read your tweets. So, but tell me.
He's got Young Player of the Season, 08, 09 and 09-10 season. He's got Palace Player of the Season, 2010-2011, Football League Young Player of the Year, 2010, PFA Team of the Year, 2011-2012. When you look at these stats, you're thinking, well, you can't go wrong with this player. But then again, it was about 10 years ago. Overall, look, I want to end it like this with Clyne. I understand people not being happy with it, some people, because they don't like former players coming back. But I feel like because it's a short-term deal and because it can provide competition, you can't really go wrong with it. Now, let's talk about the second transfer that was complete, and that is Ryan Inniss. He's actually left to go to Charlton. Personally, best of luck to him, but it was due to happen. I mean, the fact that he's 25 years old at the club and hasn't really played as much, I'm not really surprised by it.
No, well, it's difficult for me because when back in our Homestar Radio days, we interviewed him as a 15-year-old captain of.
You always mentioned this.
Yeah. But so there's a few things. The first thing to mention is that at the time he was talked about as being chased by Man City. He was a really highly rated player, and we had to work hard to keep him. He is a Charlton fan. He grew up as a Charlton fan, so he's gone to his boyhood club in a lot of ways. But I think, what I'll say about him is I don't like any disrespect for the fact that we held on to him. I think the club should be applauded for looking after a young man who came through our youth system and basically needed help, and he's gone on record as saying that he really needed to be looked after. And we shouldn't be disrespecting the club for looking after a human being, but also investing in his talent and trying to invest in his career. Football is so tough to break through, and all those academy kids that get let go all the time. Obviously they're not. The hope obviously with Ryan Inniss was that he would make good on his talent, and it's funny we've let him go at a time where, finally at 25 he started to show glimpses of it, and his last performance in a Palace shirt against Bournemouth. He was superb in that game, Deal. We watched it, didn't we? And we were traumatized by it. But in terms of him at central defence, having to constantly watch Yaroslav Yek running up and down the left side, which
Bournemouth game ended lots of careers.
but he played really, really well in that game, and I'd seen him at youth level for a little bit, and I was saying 1 minute he looks, in fact, 80% of the game he looks like a top division player. And then there's this 20% where he just loses that concentration. In that game, there was no dip. There was no 20% dip. So I think going to League One and hopefully for him playing week in, week out will be the making of him. And, we'll hopefully we'll look on him with some pride at some point that he's made a career for himself. And, I can only say I wish him all the best as well because he's a really nice lad.
Yeah, and I think you have to respect the club as well for sticking by him because, as you mentioned, he had issues off the pitch. And, any other club could have easily just said, he's having issues off the pitch, he's not performing for us, so why should we go ahead and pay him? But the club stick by him. And, the fact that he left the club age 25 just shows you have to give credit to the club for that. And that's, I think, one positive out of this. But best of luck to him. You can't blame him for wanting to move away from the club. Of course, he sports Charlton, so let's see what he does there with the Clowns. But Mark says, missed the start of the show, so I'm not sure if Zaha's been mentioned. It's wild optimism. I know any chance of him signing. Hamber, I've done a Transfer Talk episode a couple of days ago, and I said that, I'll be honest with you, I'm not optimistic about this. Do you see Zaha signing before Friday?
Well, first of all, in terms of not sure if Zaha has been mentioned, it's been mentioned 150,000 times by every reply to every CPFC tweet or every Steve Parish Instagram post or whatever. And that, I have to say, that drives me absolutely nuts where people do that. No one's going to read that and think, oh, yeah, we should bid for Zaha, shouldn't we? But anyway, is it a possibility? I think it's an outside possibility. I think there's, we were interested in him before. I dare say if we have the funds to buy him and there's an interest from him to join us, it would be a decent investment as well. Not just in our playing squad, but for his for future sell on, because we have to you have to think about these things. And you also look at what we need. People still talking about Ben Rama, but when you actually look at our squad, who's going to play? Is he going to play on the left?
You know what? Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot because I wanted Ben Rama, but every time I made a video based on Ben Rama, I'd think, well, he's going to play down. He plays down the left-hand side. So we've got Eze there, we've got Schlupp there. Where would he start?
Wilf can play out there, and
yeah, exactly. And Wilf can play there
plays
as well.
Out there, and
I would like Zaha, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So Zaha plays right side. So I would rate that as more likely if we're going to get a player from the Championship. We want a forward. We want a midfielder. We're probably not going to get both. If we're going to get anybody, it will be in my view, it'll be a forward to play on the right side as competition for Townsend, and obviously, just to add that little bit more quality. So. Because of the cost and because of the other interest in him, if they weren't talking about teams like Liverpool and Manchester United having a look at him, I'd probably be a lot more confident that we'd do something. As it is, I think it's just an outside chance, and I would call any business in answering Paul's question. I think any business from the EFL is an outside chance the way I'm looking at it at the moment.
Yeah, well, you answered the question there. I didn't even have to ask it. That's how good you are. Tom says we should go for the other QPR player, good backup and decent price for our market. I think he's talking about Samuel.
Bright Samuel.
Yeah, he was linked with us a couple of weeks ago, but I don't know. It's died down. I haven't heard anything else about him.
It's gone quiet, but you could see him being the potential. I don't want to call him a budget option, but definitely a more affordable option than Sarr would be. So again, can play right side. It would make more sense than signing another left-sided player in Ben Rama. So, but I don't know. Quality's quality, isn't it? If there's a good player out there, you try and find a way to accommodate him as best you can. So, but I haven't watched tons and tons of QPR games, so it's the same answer I gave when Eze signed, where QPR fans talk really highly of him. They were certainly right about Eberechi Eze, but whether or not Samuel's in the same quality bracket, I don't think he is. But could he play Premier League? Probably.
Do you think we need another wide player or attacker going forward? Because I still feel like I feel like we got caught in a moment when we signed Eze. We all got excited. We're like, yes, we got Eze now. We got Wilf there. But then again, when you look at our squad and we look at the last couple of games, Jeffrey Schlupp, when he's out injured, who else has got pace? Who else can play out wide, even up front, and that could provide depth? I still feel like we need at least another striker or a winger. But then again, I don't think the club are going to do it, and they're going to get away with it. They really are, and that is because we signed Eze. It is going to be annoying, but it is what it is. I'm going to be, when it comes to December, when the games are powered up and when we have injuries popping up, then we're going to realize how much lack of depth we've got in this Palace side. But let's move on to the other question. Jay says we need Sarr, Ben Rama. I agree with you there, Jay, but Ben Rama seems like he's going to West Ham. Will says, what do you think of Eze playing out wide? Do you not think he's better playing behind the top two? Well, look, every QPR fan that I've seen comment have said that Eze should play centrally. And based on what they've seen, based on what we've seen on Eze in a short time, I understand where they're coming from, because he's not the fastest player, but he's technically gifted. Put him in central positions, then he can probably pull out the passes. I don't know where you stand with this, Amber.
So here's the problem with that question, is that Roy does not play with someone. Doesn't play with someone in behind the striker, okay? So your options with Roy Hodgson as manager are Eze playing centrally as part of a 3, or Eze playing wide as part of a 4, okay? And he could play right, he could play left. What he's been told is his position, as he has said, and as Roy has said as well, is he will be playing left side, and it'll be up to him to get into central areas, to come in from that side of the pitch and affect the game as much as he can. The problem is, and the thing that I hate, and that we all probably hate, is that in a Roy Hodgson team, your primary focus in the position that he's being played is to make sure you're doing your defensive work, covering your left back. And I don't think we're ever going to see the best of Eze in a Palace shirt until Roy has hung up his managerial boots.
Hang up his managerial boots. Yeah, I agree with you. That's the situation. That's what I said at the start when we first signed Eze. People are saying let's play him centrally, but it's not going to happen because we don't play that type of formation unless Roy drastically changes his tactics, which we haven't seen in the past. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to see the best out of Eze under Hodgson, but only time will tell. Maybe he adapts his game and plays better out wide, but I don't think he's got the pace for that. Even though he's technically gifted. Terry says Yak played well versus Bournemouth. Neil,
to be fair,
he did, but he's gone now. Where did he go again? Holland. When Holland.
Yeah. Mike's not got over it yet. Mike's got, his love for Yaroslav Yak is extreme and never ending.
Yeah, and also if you guys are enjoying this live stream, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, head over to YouTube and subscribe. But let's continue with this. Neil says another old pals act at Palace, need the attacking players, not more defenders for me. I understand where you're coming from, Neil. We talked about Clyne, but I just feel like it does make sense because we've only got technically one fit right back, and you don't want to rush Nathan Ferguson as well. So that's why I understand why the club would sign Clyne on a short-term deal. Oliver says, I like Clyne, but we have 3 right backs. He won't start in the league. I guess it depends on Joe Wall's performances. If he slacks, then maybe Roy will start him. And then let's answer some of your questions as well. Season-long loan with option to buy next summer for Zaha. Do you think that could be a possibility? Because I don't know if we could go ahead and pay 30 million. I guess it depends on what the club value him and how much money we've got. But potentially something like that could make sense.
Yeah, I mean, so the Batshuayi deal being a loan, if you look at, so there is a point to me saying this. So the Batshuayi deal was done as a loan because he was in the last year of his contract. But as you saw, Chelsea gave us a loan with an option to buy and then extended his contract. And that was to enable us to keep back some funds because we wanted to buy players. Now, we haven't spent that money. So my view pretty simply is if you look at the income we've generated for transfers, and what I'm really talking about is Wan-Bissaka, we never really spent that money. It's not necessarily been ring-fenced elsewhere. We've taken a hit for COVID, as has everybody else. But basically speaking, there is the kind of money that's being talked about. If you're talking about £30 million, if the club see that as a sensible, logical investment and one where he will retain value, which I think we can all agree he would. He's a very, very talented player who's only going to get better. It makes sense to buy him. Now, having said that, it is entirely possible that we would do a loan deal because we can, and it might be an easier deal to do. It might protect Watford. Watford might feel we'll get promoted next year and maybe we can keep him in the Premier League. That might suit Watford better. So that's how I can envisage that happening. But I think, honestly, if we are going to go for Zaha and he has interest in joining Palace, then I think buying him is the best option.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not really a massive fan of loan deals. James says, will Wilf get more than 10 goals this season? Well, I think this really depends on how Hodgson approaches games. Because the first 2 games, when I feel like Wilf's role right now is his best role up front. It seems like he has freedom there. But then again, even though if he plays up front, it doesn't matter unless Hodgson actually tells us to go and attack and not be scared for the whole 90 minutes. So it really depends on how Hodgson approaches games. If he approaches it like how we played against United, where we actually pressure teams and actually try and attack, then yes, he could get 10 goals because he started the season off well and we can see what he can do. But if we play scared and if we're nervous or facing teams, then no, because of tactics. And this all comes down to Roy Hodgson rather than Wilfried Zaha not being able to get 10 goals because the tactics are stopping him.
If they let us play United every week, then he'll probably get 50 or 60 goals. But yeah, I think he's due. He's if he plays up top and he stays with us beyond January, I think if he doesn't get 10 goals this season, he should be very disappointed with his performance.
Mitch says it makes sense for Eze to play out wide for at least a bit since he's stepping up a league. Easier to get little space out wide. Putting him behind striker right away would be rough. That's another good point. Maybe he could struggle behind striker, but I guess these are ifs and buts. We will never know. We don't know if he would be better suited essentially because we probably won't see him play there on Hodgson, and that's the tough bit about it. Will says Manchester United already put in an offer for Zaha. I saw that a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not too sure what's going on right now. But
I think there was discussion. There was some sort of rumor today that they put an offer in that was rejected today. I'm not sure if that's what's being talked about there. But I've only scanned Reddit earlier on. I've been a bit busy today, so
do you know how much
people might know more than I do. I don't know. No.
If you guys know how much it was, leave down your comments and we'll try to find out. But Will also said, do you think Ayew's form has dipped? This is a good topic. Do you think Ayew's form has dipped? Seems way off the pace of the game at the minute. Do you not think he should start with batsman or with Big Ben? I do. And I was annoyed at the Chelsea game because I didn't understand why Jordan Ayew finished the game. We were losing 4-0. You had Benteke on the bench. You had the opportunity to rest Jordan Ayew, which seemed like he's tired, and I don't blame him because of the amount of games he played last season. But he still didn't get that rest. And for the Brighton game, I would drop him if I'm Roy. And now saying this, people are going to watch his back after Jordan Ayew scores a hat-trick against Brighton. But I would drop him. I would drop him against Brighton because he does look knackered. And it's not his fault because of how much we played him last season. So whether that's batsman starting, which you don't like that nickname, or or Christian Benteke, I don't mind. Start anyone ahead of Jordan Ayew. He definitely deserves the rest.
Yeah, I've got to agree that Ayew's form is definitely. I mean, describing it as dipped, I think is generous. It's fallen off a cliff. It's the Jordan Ayew we had on loan from Swansea, not the one that played last year at the moment. And DR, your views are that he just looks tired. And I believe he had a couple of assists for Ghana, didn't he, during the week?
Yeah.
Did you see? Yeah.
I think he scored a goal as well against Qatar on Monday night.
Oh, there you go. So is that further evidence that the way we're playing is actually more of an impact than the players themselves? Who knows?
I don't think so because last season he was scoring goals, and we were playing even worse.
Yeah, that's right
true. Now. So it just seems like even when he's running about, I know he always has that straight face, even when he scores a goal, but he just doesn't seem like himself. Like there is something missing in Jordan.
It's not a straight face. It's a full-on scowl. He's angry even when he's happy. Yeah. He's just a very sad, angry man for some reason. But we love him, and he was Player of the Year last year for good reason. Definitely a dip in form. And yeah, 100% agree. I would be playing Michy Batshuayi over Jordan Ayew right now. Whether or not I'd go Benteke over him, I'm not so sure, because I think the problem with when we select Benteke is that immediately the team goes much more direct. We stop putting crosses in and we just hit long balls up to him, and the whole thing falls apart. And it does Benteke no good because he wants crosses and he doesn't get them, and it does our team no good because we bypass the midfield and we cut the talent out of the play. So it drives me insane every time we select Benteke, even though I actually think there's still a good player in there somewhere.
I'm laughing because I really don't understand that Benteke logic. Not your logic, but the fact that every time he plays, we decide to not put crosses in. But when he doesn't play, we decide to put crosses in for Jordan Ayew. I don't know. It's just Roy's tactical genius right there. Terry says, so Roy did use Jack Wilshere for England. So does use a player like Said if he has one.
Yeah, I think what he's talking about is if you take aside Benrahma, you call him. He gets called a luxury player, doesn't he? A player who, effectively sort of floats around with relatively little responsibility in terms of tracking back and that kind of stuff. And it's just, I don't necessarily know if I would equate Wilshere in the same way, but I get what Terry's saying there, and I suppose it goes back to the point of discussion where, if there's a good player available, you get him and you try to make it work. But I think with Roy being Roy, the system won't change to suit players. The players will have to change to suit the system. And because of that, we'd be much better off picking someone who plays right side. And that's, obviously, as we've talked about, Sar's the one that everyone wants. My gut says we won't get it, but,
Yeah. Well, look, Hambo, we went on for a while. We were meant to be like a 10-minute little stream. They are coming in, but if you guys are enjoying it, make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms and follow us on YouTube. We're enjoying it as well. It's good to have interaction with you guys. But Hambo,
we do that. I do a podcast as well, don't we? Have you heard about
exactly?
This,
yeah, we've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, that's
You
it.
forget
Yeah,
about it.
Occasionally over the last 10 years, we've been doing a podcast. So make sure you're subscribed on your podcast app. They're recording the preview show tonight as we speak.
Right now.
Looking ahead at the Brighton game and probably talking about some of the topics that we're talking about. And the guys involved will have potentially different knowledge. So check that out. That should land probably tomorrow morning, first thing. Get subscribed on your podcast app, and you'll get that in your feed. And give it a good listen. And we'll be reviewing the Brighton game as well, which I say we will be. If we lose, we have a history of not reviewing the Brighton game if we lose. And because I don't hide it, we're stroppy and we get childish when we lose, and then we just swear at each other, and then we refuse to do the show. So
the watch along should be fun if we're losing. I mean that should be fun, especially when all the Brighton fans are coming in and we'll have watch along. But we will also be doing a watch along on Sunday. But look, we're going to wrap it up. Send in your last few questions. As I said, if you guys are enjoying it, let us know in the comments, and we can keep doing these maybe on a Wednesday. Jay says, yeah, go on, Amber.
I'm just looking at the question a couple further down. Don't worry, you cover what you're covering.
Okay. Jay says we don't pay. Always looking for a bargain. Dougie needs to go. I'm afraid. Always want Scottish players.
I say this now. The last one he wanted, Scott Banks, is a talent. All right, I am telling you this. If you have a look on Twitter, just search for his name and see his most recent goal for the 23s. Unbelievable. That kid. Whether he'll get a chance under Roy, I don't know. I know we've got him training with the first team as much as we can, and we've told him to make an impression. He should be given a chance off the bench at some point. The way he's started life as an academy player, as an under-23 at Palace. So hey, you give Dougie his dues. He went and got Scott Banks, and that boy is sensational.
The hype is there. And I'm excited about it because we do hype players, but this hype actually looks like he could live up to it. The way that he's played so far. And Roy's actually spoke about it as well, and he said that he's basically not sending him out on loan because he feels like he can actually compete for the first team. And I don't know if that's Roy just being Roy and just giving us false hope, but we'll see. Roy seems like he
lies a lot, doesn't he? Do you remember what he said about Project Restart? Well, I'm going to have to use all the young players, aren't I?
I was going to make a video on that, but then I stopped because I was going to go on a crazy run. Terry said Roy in his first weeks at Palace said he plays the tactics that his squad dictates, but I don't get it.
Have we seen that though?
Yeah,
I suppose we could just simply argue that Roy has his view of the squad, and to be fair, we made some signings and he's changed it to a 4-4-2 this season. So I suppose that could follow. And look, I'm not necessarily saying that he's wrong. He's kept us in the league. He's one of the longest serving managers in the league. But I think we're all reaching a point where we've got to understand he's not going to take us forward. But that's not necessarily to say any replacement. Any replacement will come in and actually do a better job. That's far from guaranteed.
Scott says, is Cahill fit for the weekend? Are you talking about this question?
I was. Yeah. Because it's something that crossed my mind. I was doing a piece for a Brighton paper, and they asked the question, in terms of who do I expect to start, and I thought, obviously Sacco had a nightmare, and Cahill's been in full training as has Tompkins. But my gut says it's probably a little bit too early. But then I thought back to last season when Cahill came back from a bit. Well, we just chucked him in without a pre-season and just played him every week, didn't we? So
and he was fantastic though.
Yeah, and we played him until he broke in Project Restart.
Literally.
I didn't think he would be selected, but having thought about it, the fact that he's training, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays.
Do you think he plays ahead of Sacco? Because I had this conversation with Nav on Twitter, and I feel like he should start. I don't care who it is, even Gyro signed ahead of Sacco, because I understand Sacco is meant to be our best centre-back, but after the performance against Chelsea, I just have zero faith in him once again, just like I did before the game before against United.
I think it's all about how you frame that. If we're saying that Cahill plays over Sacco every time because Cahill's a better player, that's a different debate. But if we're saying that the performance that Sacco put in, he deserves to be dropped. Yes, he does. He absolutely deserves to be dropped for that. He wasn't the only player at fault, and he certainly wasn't the only person at fault.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people at fault for that game against Chelsea, as much as they're a good side. But he deserves to lose his place for that. And if we're going to do that, then Cahill has every right to step in. And I would pick him over. If he's fit, I would pick him over Sacco.
Yeah, and it also got a bit heated, the Sacco conversation on a live watch along. All right, so let's get Palace fan question. Why is it a short-term deal? I feel like it's a short-term deal because we got Nathan Ferguson who's going to come back. So we'll see how Nathaniel Clyne performs. And if he does play, and then maybe, depending on the situation, it could be a long-term deal. Maybe I'm not too sure. That's just my assumption because we've got another right back that's injured. And that's why we probably signed him. Okay, Jay says, what managers would you want to replace Roy? I'll say Eddie Howe or Thomas Frank, the Brentford manager. Well, Hambo, you're obsessed with Eddie Howe. Every time
I'm not obsessed with him. I just believe that he is already going to be the choice. I believe that everything.
Would you be happy with it?
No, I get stick for this, but I actually really like Daniel Farke at Norwich. I think he's a really, really good manager. I think he's a brave manager, and I think I think you've got a mate who's played at Norwich, so maybe you've got a different view on it. But it is. I just like how Norwich went about things. I think they had a far weaker squad. I know they went down, and I know they went down with a bit of a whimper in the end, but. You rated their squad higher than I did, I think. But I think he just developed those players really well. I think, there was a lot of youngsters in that side. You think of the likes of, Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis, and I think probably, Cantwell being one of the biggest ones. I think the way he nurtured them and they became his best players at very, very young ages. And I just see that kind of manager tying in nicely with what we're doing with the academy in our future. That's where I am.
It works with him, but don't you think he didn't really change it up, did he? And that's the thing with Roy that we're frustrated about. But it's more positive because he decided to stick with attack rather than defense. But let's say the same thing happens, wouldn't he be frustrated if we're conceding goals left, right, centre? Right now with Roy, well, of course, Chelsea game we lost 4-0. But in general, he's meant to be a good defensive coach. And you want a coach who can change it up. You want a coach who can change it up. With Norwich, I didn't really see that. I saw them play one style of football, and he was stubborn with it when he didn't even have the place to play that type of football in the Premier League.
And I suppose that always comes down to the question that people would rightfully ask when we're talking about criticising Roy, which is, does doing something different necessarily get you better results? If his belief is this is the best that I can do with the squad that I have. We've heard. I just find it's an easier thing to think about. This way of playing, this way of operating is the best that we can do. When it's a positive thing, it's easier to handle than when it's a negative thing. So what I mean by that is Farke saying we've got to go out and use. I've only got the players to attack, so I'm going to attack. And play this way of play this type of football. I can find that a bit easier to deal with than someone who says I'm only going to select these 11 players when they're fit. I'm not going to give youth a chance because I can't justify dropping an experienced player, and we're gonna stick in this system. We're not going to concede. We nullify the opposition, and then we might get around to attacking at some point. And now that's a really crass way of describing Hodgson, and it's disrespectful in some ways. But we are running very long, so I just thought I'd sum it up like that. That's why. But I've got fears over Howe. Howe, I think he's a manager we tried to employ before. He's out of work. I think. If he's sufficiently rested, he just seems like he's an obvious choice for us, and I expect that to happen. If we get the Eddie Howe with Bournemouth at their best, where they were annoyingly good, great. But if you look at how it fell apart, and you look at the money that was invested, where he wasn't able to address it, and he was just a beaten man by the end, that's the fear that I have. So there you go.
So it says, I respect and thank Roy for what he's done, and I think it's time for our club to move on. You're not the only one. So Alfie Matthews is absolutely on fire. Big things coming from that boy. Amber, you seem like you're excited about Alfie Matthews as well. Sorry, I just sat up because my arse is numb. Calm down.
I only thought I was going to sit down for 5 minutes, and here I am still. But no, Matthews I've seen probably maybe sort of 70, 80 minutes in total of games I've caught academy-wise. But when he was on trial, I had a look at his reputation in terms of what he was doing at Arsenal, and they actually expected him to kick on. He'd scored a decent number of goals in their 18s, and was, relatively highly regarded. And in probably, I can't remember what game it was now, but there was a game where Banks was playing left side, Matthews was playing right, and they both looked superb. I can't say I've seen too much more of Matthews since, but he impressed me in that game, and I hope you're absolutely right there. So, but it's nice to see us bringing in these players now. We're Cat One Academy. We can start picking up these players who have that experience, and maybe we'll get a gem in there. And hopefully Matthews is one.
Yeah, the ball's on your court, Hambo. Should we wrap it up or should we keep going? It's up to you. We didn't plan this.
Try and plow through the rest of the questions as quickly as you can, and if we run out of questions before we get to end it.
All right, so it's on you guys. If you send us questions, then we'll continue. But yeah, Palace fan says Saka is awful. Look at the performance against Leicester last year and Chelsea this season. Doesn't look like a Prem footballer. I think he's a Prem footballer. I think that's a bit harsh, but he's not consistent enough. I don't think he is, whether he's injury-wise, if we're talking about, or his performances as well. I personally wouldn't be too upset if we sold him, because I feel like we could still go and invest that money elsewhere because of the amount of wages that he's reportedly on.
No, I don't want to get too bogged down in it, Diyar, but there's a difference between what people say about Sacco and what reality actually is, and I understand why it is. He has a certain style of play that does, you do get your heart in your mouth, but it's easy to forget that the majority of times, he either gets away with something when he does try something a little outrageous, or he actually displays incredible quality. He's a fantastic passer of the ball, but he takes risks, and people remember that more than I remember anything else. But I would say that the performance from the other night is not reflective of the ability of the player. However, it might be reflective of the fact that he's had so many injuries and he's not had a proper consistent run of games to get himself back to his best. And he's at an age now. He must have turned 30 now.
Yeah, I think so.
With that many injuries, he's probably on the decline. We have to be honest about that. So, I don't think I'm gonna claim he's the best possible option at centre back now, but I think he has been our best defender for quite some time. We just haven't been able to see enough of him.
Yeah. Keith says, cheers, guys. You're better than the England game. I forgot that England were even playing. I don't really watch England, but Turkey are losing. That's another positive, I guess.
I mean, at least you've got a reason. I'm not watching England because I could not give a shit anymore.
Yeah. Fair enough. Will says, I think everyone's forgetting how good Tompkins is. Because everyone's mentioning Kale, but what about Tompkins? That is a very good point. we've been caught up in the moment. But the problem is you can't really drop Kouyaté. So who do you start? You can't drop Kouyaté for Tompkins and Cahill because he's been performing well. You can if Tompkins comes back and he's as good as he was. But I think even James Tompkins has forgotten how good James Tompkins is. He's been out that long. So, Hambo, you can't. Come on. Look how good he's played. He's Player of the Month contender as well. I mean, you can't do any better than that.
I'm a big believer. I don't think he would be, but I'm a big believer in playing your best players. That's how I view.
But Saka must be our best player. But look what's happening. Yeah. That's the thing. I think form is important as well.
No, of course it is. I'm not disputing that at all. But if Tompkins had been out for 3 weeks, then it's a debate worth having. But apparently Maguire's been sent off. That's because he's a terrible footballer. But look, if Tompkins is about too long to start thinking about him coming in and replacing Kouyaté. So I'm not going to go down that road. But I do think at some point Kouyaté will lose his spot when we have our regular centre-backs back.
Jay says I don't want Sean Dyche.
Nobody does. Nobody does.
I do.
You'd hate it, DR.
Would I? I've been a massive fan of his. Not massive fan. I've been a fan of the rumor suggesting that we'll go for Dyche because I don't think you can do any worse with Hodgson. So I wouldn't mind Dyche at the club. But then again, I don't know, man.
I've told you before, mate. He does not suit Palace. There's nothing about Sean Dyche that is South London.
You're worried about him behind the scenes, aren't you?
I'm not going to say what I really want, but yeah, I just think. I mean, look, you know, he's a disciplinarian. You know, he's gone on record as saying he doesn't let people wear headphones. He doesn't let people be on their. He fines people for being on their mobiles. He's not a South London boy, is he? He's an old school manager. But you know, even Warnock at Palace let people have that little bit of freedom and accepted that his old-fashioned ways weren't necessarily the way. Dyche is a disciplinarian. If we had the kind of squad that was, should we say, really talented but lacked leadership and lacked, proper management, I would say, yeah, probably a good option, but he won't last. But we don't have that. We have a squad that's desperate to be let off the leash, in my view. And that's why we need a progressive manager, not one that harks back to the old days.
Yeah, but then I think, look what he's done with the Burnley squad. You look at the Burnley squad compared to ours. I spoke to a Burnley fan on last season, and he said that we've got a better squad. We do have. So if he's doing that with Burnley and getting them at European football, then wouldn't you want that at Palace?
You could say it in two different ways. You can go, look what he's done with that Burnley squad. You can go, oh, look what he's done with that Burnley squad. Because look what he's built there. You know, he's built that. Okay, they don't have massive resources, but he's the one who's built this functional squad. And let's not forget, we do them most times we play him. You know, he's not like Roy outmanages him every time.
And Eddie Howe though. And Eddie Howe, because remember when Saka was sent off and we beat them with 10 men. So
remember when I said I didn't want Howe? I'm not defending that, but I'd rather have Howe than Dyche. I think Howe fits in better with our club than Dyche does.
All right, then we're gonna have to wrap it up soon. So last couple of questions. There's 46 minutes. I've enjoyed it so far. So if you want us you want us to do this on a regular basis, then let us know. And maybe we can do live shows during a week.
Can I have a live? Am I allowed a live?
No, you're not allowed a live. Amber. And Kelly. Sorry. And Kelly, if no longer using him ever at right back, then why no starts in the middle?
I just think he was a victim of getting a bit of an injury at the wrong time because he never, ever lets us down, Martin Kelly. I think when he becomes a regular, you know, at some point he does get exposed at the back in some ways, whether that's playing at right back or playing at centre back. And we suddenly remember going, oh, that's probably why he doesn't get picked every week. But as a player to come in and give you, you know, a run of 3-4 games, he's been brilliant for us from day one. And, he has my ultimate respect. You forget how long he's been here as well, Kelly.
Tony Pulis days. I remember.
Yeah, exactly. He signed the day Pulis left, didn't he? So,
yeah, that's a while.
Bless him. But yeah, look, decent option at right back, but he's realistically he's cover for cover at right back. You know, he's not a week in, week out, in my view.
Yeah, all right. Last question from Dave. Did you do the Palace for Life March, Hambo, this year?
I didn't know because I'm on an ultra low calorie diet at the moment, which if I attempted to walk 26 miles, I would perish at around mile 4. So I it was a fantastic effort by everybody who did it. Last year was brilliant, and I genuinely was gutted not to do it this year, but I had some I don't go too far into it, but for some health reasons I needed to address things, and that's going very well, but it's not conducive to marathon walking. So I saw a lot of money was raised, a lot of brave people considering the current national circumstances as well. So well done to everyone, and we'll definitely be back next year. Well, I will.
All right, so that's it for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to leave a like and subscribe because we enjoyed it as well. We didn't plan this. I mean, we've been talking for around 49 minutes. We planned a little Nathaniel Clyne and Inniss talk, and we managed to go on and talk about transfers, talk about managers, talk about players. But look, if you want us to do this on a more regular basis, let us know. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on future content. And until next time, up the Palace.